Hey, Fedheads, you're tuned in to another episode of Cigar Chat. I am your host, John the Cigar Surgeon. Cigar Chat is broadcast live around the world and picked up on the Armed Forces Radio Network. Of course, you can tune in at cigarfederation.com, which is our home, or you can go to youtube.com for whatever reason, or you can go to Facebook Live, which is the new hotness. Drop us a comment, leave us feedback, leave us some questions. We've got a great guest tonight, but before we get to our guest, I want to say hi to my co-host, Trippy Trent. Trippy, what's going on, brother?
Not much. As we talked about before the show, my allergies are kind of killing me. So if you're watching, you guys may notice that my eyes look like they might fall out of my head at any moment. I promise I'm fine. I'll live.
I hear you, man. It's I wake up every morning now. I mean, I love summer. I live for summer. I live for the sunlight. But waking up every morning and it's not a good scene. It's not a good scene.
Yeah, and I'm taking I think I'm taking 4 different allergy medications right now because normally I rotate, and this year taking one just doesn't do anything.
Wow, bad news.
It's terrible.
But of course, we're not really here to talk about allergies, as exciting as they are. We're really here to talk to our special guest, our very special guest, Omar de Frias. Omar, what's going on, brother?
Dude, I am excited to be here as always, man. It's amazing how it's been 4 years. I remember when we did this the first time, and Jesus, it's a lot of things that's transpired, man. I mean, everything from getting our first 100 accounts and getting out there on the road while I was working at NASA and doing this full time, and same thing while working, expanding our brands and expanding our lineup and expanding our footprint in people's shelves, to me quitting NASA in 2016 in October to do this full time. I mean, it's been a hell of a ride, man. I can't, I feel very blessed.
I mean,
So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you very much for being on the show, and it's great timing because, of course, we've got the IPCPR, which seems like really next week, because I feel like I need to start washing some shorts, getting packed, because it's right around the corner. But I mean, you kind of touched on it with you being at NASA. We were just talking the other day about how we really couldn't imagine how complicated it was to manage. And I don't know what it's like to work at NASA. I have no idea, but if my imagination is anything, I'm sure it's like it's not a 40-hour a week job. And then you take a cigar job, which, I mean, cigar job is really, it could be a 200-hour a week job, because it really just depends on whether you're still conscious. So we were not sure how you ever managed to have a life, have a family, work at NASA, and manage a full brand portfolio. I mean, how, like, what's Fratello coffee? Is that the secret? Like, just nonstop?
Yeah, no, I'll tell you, coffee and ambition, man. It drives you. I will tell you, I don't miss the sleepless nights, because the truth of the matter is I was taking my body to limits that it has never been taken before. And so, being at NASA at 7:30 in the morning, leaving at 7:30 at night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then hitting the road on Thursday night or Wednesday night, depending on the day of the week. So I can telework for NASA and then do Fratello on Fridays, Saturdays, and come back on Sundays. 3.5 years in of that constant state of mind it was more than I thought I was going to be able to handle. I mean, I thought I wasn't going to be able to do it for over a year, and I ended up doing it for 3.5 because things just fell in place. But I feel great, man. I really I thought that after leaving NASA I was going to work a little bit less, and all of a sudden I'm working. I mean, it's just incredible. But there's one thing that I tell everybody else has been the best thing that has happened since departing, is your brain processing power goes from 0 to 60 like that. All of a sudden, you don't have another 50% of your brain that's operating on an entirely different dimension.
Yeah.
Did I file? Did we do the job with the operating plan? Did we go ahead and evaluate the programmatic reviews for this particular mission? I mean, all of those things that are constantly in the back of your brain for any particular job, for your job, for anybody's jobs out there. You know how this is. You think you get home, you're having your dinner, and all of a sudden, something pops in your head. It's like, did I do this? Did I leave this for yesterday? Did I did it for tomorrow? I mean, what is that constant thing? And that's just a thought. That's just a thought on one part of your brain. And all of a sudden, you add that to, did I return Dave Garofalo's phone call? Yeah, he called me yesterday. Did I follow up with this particular email? Am I ready for the IPCPR? Did we already get? I mean, it's that duality was truly taking away the remaining hair that I don't have. I figured, how damn, if I would got to take all of this hair right now, just let it fall down, it was just going to be completely horrible at that time. But it was strenuous. It was hard. I will not deny that. But then again, if it wasn't for that vehicle, that served me in so many capacities, it opened so many doors for me in so many areas, and I don't know if I would be where I'm at right now. So,
well, you kind of touched on it, Omar. I think the risk when you leave a demanding role like that, and obviously you got to have some work life balance. But the risk, of course, being a brand owner and a brand manager, and all of those hats that you're wearing. I guess not a brand manager because you got someone in that position, but as a brand owner, as a small business owner, the risk is that you go back and now reinvest that all of those spare hours back into the brand instead of finding that balance. So did you find that you were kind of going the other way where you were doing a little bit of that, or did you find that there was this huge gap in your day where all of a sudden you could kind of go home and actually have dinner and relax for a moment?
I will tell you, it's a combination of those things. There were multiple things that really allowed me to go from the day I left NASA, which was a very, very hard day for me, because I do love what NASA stands for, and I do love the mission. But it was very hard for me to really, not have that other part of my brain where it was focusing on a lot of, there was a lot of logistics, there was a lot of numbers, there was a lot of finance, there was a lot of budget, there was a lot of things that you sort of needed to stay on top of it, because if you didn't, then it would create way bigger problems than the majority of people think. And so going and all of a sudden erasing that and focusing on one single industry, right, and just cigars, focusing on my brand, focusing on my product, focusing on my marketing, focusing on my website, focusing on my social media, focusing on the quality of the tobacco, focusing on our retailers, focusing on the customer service, was challenging enough that the amount of work that I have put in really hasn't reduced. It's just shifted. But it is a hard shift. I will not deny that, John. It was to the point that I was like, at some point I was thinking maybe I should do something else. Maybe I'll get myself into, I don't know, selling water. Or, you know what I mean? Like, you start thinking about other things, and then all of a sudden you sort of stop. It's like, just let's do this. You know what I mean? Let's just focus on Fratello. And all of a sudden the growth has been there. It's followed. But it took me a couple of months, man. I will not deny that. By the time that I quit NASA, Fratello Oro was being released, and it was November, December, and obviously very, very busy months. It was a lot of shipping. It was a lot of handling. It was a lot of phone calls. It was a lot of making sure retailers had what they needed. A lot of time on the road. A lot of events. And so it was challenging, because you have all of these things, and you think that there's so many things that you need to do in terms of, a gazillion other things, like, focusing on your marketing, what's going on with your website, what's happening with X or Y retailer, but you're processing, hundreds of orders and following up with retail. So it was challenging. Trip. It was challenging, John, at every single level. But I'm blessed that it's all worked out. And year to date, I'm up 44%, which is
Nice.
pretty damn amazing.
Wow.
So and it shows that it was extra time that I needed.
So before we talk about the new hotness, the Nevada, maybe we should talk about the Oro, because it's interesting. And I see some boutique manufacturers doing this where, I think maybe the traditional route was to start with the Connecticut shade and then work your way up the strength chart, because, as we hear from the retailers, 70% of the market, 60% of the market is Connecticut shade. But of course, I don't think you're not really a Connecticut shade kind of guy. You are a boutique smoker. You like to smoke in the medium plus category, and you went with that with your initial launch. So went with the Habano, and now you've got the Oro, and Trippy, you're smoking that right now, aren't you?
I am, and for anybody out there who didn't read my review, I'll spoil it and say I gave it a 92, and I just love this blend. Ooh. I think it's hands down one of my favorite Connecticut's. Because it doesn't smoke like a Connecticut. It's got that Connecticut kind of flavor that you're used to, but it doesn't, I don't know. There's just something to me that's typically boring about a Connecticut. If you get a Connecticut that's not boring, it's something special. But this is like one step past that, where if I was smoking it with my eyes closed, I might not even know it was Connecticut. It's just a fantastic cigar.
Thank you. It's funny sir, that you mentioned that, because I 100% agree. And to answer your question, John, you're right. I mean, when we're talking about Connecticut's, you got to be very careful. And it's not that it wasn't something that I've been thinking about for a long time, because I have. It was just I couldn't pinpoint on the blend, man. I just had a hard time. I had a very, very hard time. Connecticut tends to be a very bitter wrapper, and so it's
absolutely
to blend that bitterness away, man. I tell you, it was hard for me. I don't consider myself a master blender by any means. I do consider myself a master taster. I taste and I taste, and if it doesn't connect, I'm sorry, we're not working it. So when we went down to La Aurora factory in the Dominican Republic, and I met with the guys at Guillermo and Gustavo and Manuel, to blend the cigar, and we worked on the blend, and we worked on so many different levels. I mean, it was just, the tobacco was right for what we were trying to do. We were trying to get into a savory, very full flavor Connecticut that does not imprint that bitterness. I do want a little bit. I don't want it just to completely go away, because it is part of your palate, but I don't want it to take over your palate. And that's exactly what this does. And Trip, you can agree with me on this, but it's truly has creaminess to it that is very lingering, but it's a very, very clean, very decent finish to the cigar. That I do believe it's one of the best Connecticut we have in the market.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I'm not a master blender, and I would say I'm a master taster, but my experience with tobacco is extremely limited. But within what you're saying, I think I understand, because Connecticut is such a nuanced wrapper, and typically what you get out of a Connecticut blend is such a nuanced blend that you kind of have to walk that very fine line between just making another Connecticut that's like every other Connecticut, and making a Connecticut that's got something different, but yet still comes across like a Connecticut, and it doesn't run that wrapper over. It doesn't take away the whole purpose of having the wrapper there in the first place. And I can only imagine how challenging that would be to tune that in.
I hear people all the time. It's like, oh no, I'm playing this Connecticut and that, and I'm like, Jesus, it took me 7 months, and it was back and forward, and it was more challenging to blend. Bianco was pretty challenging as well, but this was a challenge for me, especially because of my flavor profile and what I look for in a cigar. I want a combination of a lot of things, and so I think we 100% achieved it with Fratello Oro.
Nice.
So I have a follow-up question to that. So what made you
before you get to that question? Sorry.
Yeah, it's break time.
It's break time. Yeah, got to keep you on point. I'm the den mother, and that's how it's going to be in Las Vegas when we get down to Vegas too. So I do want to remind our audience, you are tuning into Cigar Chat, broadcast live around the world, picked up on the Armed Forces Radio Network. I'm your host, John the Cigar Surgeon, joined by Omar de Frias of Fratello Cigars, and of course my co-host Trippy Trent. Stay tuned for a word from one of our sponsors. Sharing Our Pairings is brought to you by Gurkha Cigars. Gurkha Cigars, makers of the world's finest cigars. Try the 93 rated Heritage, featuring a Rosado Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, Nicaraguan binder, and Dominican, Pennsylvanian, and Nicaraguan fillers. Blended by Gurkha's blending team at American Caribbean Cigars, it is hand-rolled Nicaraguan, available in 35-count boxes. Talk to your local B&M about the Heritage today, or talk to them about other fine Gurkha cigars. Whatever your taste preferences, Gurkha has a cigar that's right for you. And we're back. Trippy, I cut you off there. You had a follow-up question. Let's hit that up.
Yeah. So, Omar, what made you choose La Aurora after previously working with Hoy de Nicaragua?
So, very interesting question, Trip, because it was a combination of factors, but one was there was an emotional factor for me.
Sure.
The first cigar I ever had was from the La Aurora factory in the Dominican Republic. And as a matter of fact, the first time I actually ever wanted to do a cigar was with La Aurora factory in the Dominican Republic, because it's what I knew, right? It's there was a little bit of two things. It was a little bit of the emotional part of me saying, first cigar I ever had was from the La Aurora factory. And number two, it was obviously what I knew. And so coming into this industry, I knew nobody. I had no idea who anybody was, really. I've been a smoker for a long time. I knew the tobaccos. I didn't really follow people, but I followed blends. I followed tobacco. I followed the flavor. And I was very good at picking out great blends and sitting and smoking it. So I was always very, very involved with the cigars itself, but I really didn't knew the people behind it. And that was a challenge, because I went down to the Dominican Republic, and the way I ended up at Joya de Nicaragua was because Jose Blanco, my good friend Jose, was working at Joya de Nicaragua at the time. And so by an associate, he calls me up while I'm in the Dominican Republic looking for a factory that can help me in understanding this a little bit better, give me some tours, get a good feel for it. This was back 2011, 2012. It was a very interesting transition, because he calls me up and said, you should come to Nicaragua. We got great tobaccos here, man. The factory is doing amazing things. Come and check it out. And I did, and the rest was history. So I knew eventually I wanted to get back to Santo Domingo and Santiago and Dominican Republic, because I am originally from the Dominican Republic. So I knew that was that was something I obviously wanted to do. But in choosing La Aurora, it was the tobaccos 100%. I mean, the emotional will take you to just 0.5. The other 0.5, you got to bring you with the tobaccos. And if there's a company in the Dominican Republic that has aged tobaccos, well done. I mean, inventory of tobaccos that will blow your mind is La Aurora factory in the Dominican Republic. The oldest tobacconist in the Dominican Republic as well.
Great answer. You also knocked out one of my other questions, which is why you chose Joya de Nicaragua.
Yeah. It was great, man. Joya, they are an amazing partner. We understand each other. There was a lot of figuring out this very large Dominican that worked at NASA and wants to do a cigar, and they kept on asking me these questions all the time. Every time I would go down there, and when I quit, that was like, what are you doing? It's like, well, guys, you're producing my cigars. You should know what we're doing. I mean, it was unbelievably challenging at times, because I have my ways of doing things. They have their, Joya has their way of doing things. Same thing with La Aurora. They have their ways of doing things. I have my ways of doing things. But once you find that middle ground, it's literally, for me, it's smooth sailing.
We got time for an audience question before I get into some hard-hitting questions here, Trippy?
Sure thing. I've got an easy one here. What do you miss the most about working for NASA?
I miss the people. I do. I miss the people. I miss the missions. I miss waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, where you're so involved on a program like Cassini, or the rover, Mars. I mean, there's so many different. When you're so involved with the missions, you become part of them, because you are, and everything we did played a role. Everything. From the guy in every single position, from the guy who was, working on the contracting for the grants that we would, work with a specific university, to the guy that was actually executing and sending money to a particular center so that they could do their jobs, to the scientist that was putting together the payload to take it to, that we're going to launch in 2 or 3 months. Every single piece had to work. Otherwise, it's battle throughout. And so I miss the people the most. I miss the missions. I miss being part of that, of something so great that is literally out of this world.
Yeah, I could imagine it being a pretty good feeling just to be involved with any part of a mission like that.
Just hearing you talk about it gets me all excited. Like
me too.
I love. I mean, we're all nerds, right? Like a lot of people in the industry are nerds, but especially for space, for exploration, for science. Every time there's a new discovery, or there's, like like just the other day they were like, oh, they found 10 new planets within the habitable zone, and I'm like, oh, so I stop what I'm doing to read it because like that's I grew up with that. That excites me. But I don't want to get off topic because we could talk space for like 2 hours and not even break a sweat. I want to talk about the new hotness because you just announced it 2 days ago. It's the Navetta, which is I'm probably pronouncing that wrong because it's Italian, right? You've got.
Well, you got it though.
Is it
You
still
got
okay?
It. That's
So
very good.
So I mean, I'm still trying to get used to the fact that Romance languages, French, Italian, Spanish. There's a lot of crossover. Now, if I recall right, the influence for you is because in college you took Italian and sort of stuck, which is where Fratello comes from. So that's kind of played an influence. But the other thing I want to remark on here is obviously you've used a lot of Ecuadorian wrappers and binders throughout your blends, and we see that here in the Navetta with the Oscuro. So maybe talk about sort of the profile of the blend, and maybe talk a little bit about that blending process because I'm interested. It sounds like a really interesting cigar.
So the Habano is this is the first time we actually use an Habano Ecuador. We've used Habanos. We used an Habano Nicaragua, Colorado from Jalapa in the Fratello, the original Fratello. Right. On the Bianco, we used a San Andres Negro wrapper. And now we use the Connecticut, Ecuador, Connecticut on the Fratello Oro. This was a challenging wrapper for me, for a lot of reasons, because the wrapper is gorgeous, right? So this wrapper that we were using, it was savory, it was flavorful, it was beautiful. But the reality is I love Nicaraguan wrappers. I do. I love that wrapper, and it was always one that even when I would taste them side by side, I would always 100% choose Nicaraguan, the same blend. It would choose the Nicaraguan wrapper just because of that flavor profile, the spiciness out of it. There's so many different nuances and notes that I think come out of that particular soil that is very unique. And so a little challenging to work with this particular wrapper, but we ended up working with a couple of proprietary tobaccos that Joya de Nicaragua has, which is very unique. They're producing their own tobaccos in Esteli, and my God, is that tobacco outstanding. And so it was very refreshing to work with some of those tobaccos along with some of those visos that we found in Jalapa and Condega, to be able to put this blend together. We use a Piloto Cubano Dominican binder on this, which is outstanding. We played with other ones. We played with Indonesian. We played with Cameroon. We played with a whole bunch of different things, but it wasn't, the blend didn't come really together until we put that Dominican Piloto Cubano binder on it, so it could burn a little bit better, a little bit slower than it was burning before. So we played on it. We played with this blend quite a bit, particular because of the wrapper that we wanted to use. So for any blender, and this is me listening to other people speak, but I can only speak for myself in this case. But when you start working on a blend, you got to think about the wrapper first. For me, I think about which wrapper I want to use. I knew I wanted to use that Habano. I wasn't sure which priming, if it was the Oscuro, if it was the Claro, but I knew I wanted to play with that particular wrapper because I ran away from it as far as I could, but I couldn't run away from it anymore. And so if you look at cigar companies throughout the industry as well, I mean, usually their first blends, they don't usually go the Habano Nicaraguan route. I mean, some do. They really do. I mean, if you look, it's Habano Ecuador, Habano Ecuador, Habano Ecuador, Habano Ecuador. Yep. All day long. Look at La Flor. Look at Jose Blanco when he releases Señorial. Look at some of the EPC stuff. Look at some of the stuff that, I mean, it's Habano. Look at Steve Saka. I mean, we can go on and on and on and on about all these different brands that start off with Habano because it's a safer wrapper. Yep. I believe it's a safer wrapper. For me, it was just a palate. It's just, I needed to find what was the right tweak, and we did. And now it's a cigar is earthier. It's got, again, something that I look for a lot in a cigar is it needs to have a clean finish for my taste. It needs to have what I call the umami effect. So it's got a little bit of that saltiness, it's got a little bit of that sweetness, a little bit of that bitterness. But all of these things sort of come together in your mouth, and we did this with the Fratello Navetta.
It makes me want to light up right now. I'll tell you right now. That sounds delicious. It sounds delicious. So one of the other projects that just hit the market, of course, is the Firecracker,
Yeah.
which is kind of a yearly release. I think going back, I think it's 6 or 7 years now with 2 guys. So it's kind of a cool project. So they started out with one particular company, and then every year they rotate it and come out with a new blend, similar vitola, similar size. Can you talk a little bit about that project? I mean, there's some interesting tobaccos in there. If you've got Peruvian filler in there,
Yeah.
and it's a unique size because it's 3.5 by 50, which is, unusually small. Talk a little bit about that. It sounds like a fun project, frankly.
I love that project, man. I love the project so much. I ended up sending David a whole bunch of different things, including different packaging ideas. And I was like, I'm going crazy with this. What do you think about this? He's like, Omar, let's just do a box. Let's just do this. Let's make it simple. And I was like, all right, fine. But I was in love with. I was fascinated by making this project so unique because of everything it stood for and because of how grateful I really was to get an opportunity where he really could have chosen anybody. I mean, Dave Garofalo is one of the best retailers in the U.S.
Yeah, he's got a lot
He
of
could have
pull.
chosen anybody to do this, and he chose Fratello. Why? I mean, we got a great blend, we got a great relationship, but there has to be more. It was the tobacco, it was the cigar guys. If you haven't had the Firecracker, you have no idea what you're missing. This is a 3.5 by 50 little firecrackers. All the way to describe it.
It's got the cool fuse on
We
it.
blended it. Yeah, it's a nice little blend. We blended it with a Saxane blend of Fratello. It's a Habano Nicaraguan wrapper with an Ecuador Sumatra binder and Peruvian and Nicaraguan Ligero. The difference with this though is we increased the amount of Ligero that the original blend has. So the original blend, it was a very interesting combination of basically half Ligero, half Visas from Peru. We mostly use Ligeros from Peru and Ligeros from Nicaragua on this cigar. So the strength level is definitely there, but it's not so present that it departs too much from the original Fratello, because that's something you don't want to do. Yeah. I wanted to keep with the essence of the Fratello original blend, which is still to me one of my favorite cigars out there. Is a little Corona size that we have, 5.5 by 46. But dude, this is savory. It's got some nice spice, but not overpowering like a lot of very full body cigars out there. But this was a home run for our company, and we sold 150 boxes in the first hour or something like that. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Fantastic. Well, I think the whole Firecracker project I think is really fascinating, but more fascinating is the fact that Dave himself is not a full-bodied smoker. That's totally outside of his wheelhouse, and yet they carry this, balls to the wall cigar. He'll smoke it, and then he'll just talk about how strong it is. So I don't know. I think it's a really cool project, and I love to see more of that in the industry. I do want to take a moment and remind our audience that you are tuned into CigarChat, broadcast live around the world and picked up on the Armed Forces Radio Network. I'm your host, John the Cigar Surgeon, joined by our special guest, Omar de Frias from Patello Cigars. And of course, I am joined by Trippy Trent, our co-host. Please stay tuned for a word from one of our sponsors. This show is sponsored by Cigar Oasis. Don't spend all your time worrying about your cigar wrappers cracking, splitting, or falling apart from humidity fluctuation issues. Set it and forget it by choosing Cigar Oasis, a professional solution which provides equal distribution of humidity with precise electronic controls. Monitor your cigars through the internet using the Smart Humidor Wi-Fi attachment. Why don't you spend all your time enjoying your cigars and relaxing, and let Cigar Oasis protect your cigars? Cigar Oasis has solutions for any humidor. Make sure you set it and forget it today. And we're back talking to our special guest, Omar from Fratello, the gentle giant, as I like to call him, because you have this big, deep voice, and it's so calming, it's so soothing. It's like you walk into a room, and it's just like you just calm the whole room down. It's fascinating to me.
But and as I've talked about before on the show,
oh my God, Daddy's about to get mad again. They're like, Jesus. There's
as I've talked about before, those dance moves, man, it's nuts, mind blowing.
I can bring it out. It's funny because perception sometimes is, when they see a guy that's big, right? People have an idea. It's like, oh my God, this guy. I mean, told people can't dance, and all of a sudden I break a move. It's like, whoa, what was that? They don't understand it, right? And then all of a sudden they hear me speak sometimes, and kids get the worst of it because sometimes I do also have I have a deep voice, but it's when a kid is looking at me, when somebody looks at me talking to my kids, and I'm a very expressive guy, so I'm telling them like, don't do this or try to focus on that. You know what I mean? I'm trying to. It's not like I'm talking to them in a very loud way, but because of how big I am and how I carry myself with all these gestures, people are like, "Oh my God, he's like really yelling at this person. He's really doing this." I'm like, no. I'm just it comes with the territory.
So I wanted to quickly ask. This is totally not related to cigars at all, but you speak Spanish fluently.
Yes.
You speak Italian fluently, I assume. What other languages do you speak?
So I've worked on my Portuguese quite a bit while I was at NASA. I'm an ongoing learner. I love learning things. I love learning new languages. When you don't practice them, it becomes pretty tough to be able to maintain. I've studied French for 4 years as well, so I'm a fan. The issue is practicing, what I mean, and getting the lingo and understanding it and continuing. Even in Spanish, I'll tell you, Spanish is my first language. I go back home to the Dominican Republic, and it's very hard not to carry a full sentence just in Spanish. I mean, it happens to me. I don't know if maybe I'm just not as smart as everybody else, but it's just sometimes you're just talking in Spanish, da 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 da, and then all of a sudden, you understand what I mean? So you like put something in English, and then just like, what? It's like, oh, I'm sorry. It's like, it's very challenging. My wife speaks fluent Portuguese, so I practice with her as many times as I possibly. I love language, I really do.
So a question that I see in interviews all the time with people who speak multiple languages, which you just kind of answered, but you think in English, right?
So I don't.
That's what it sounds like.
It's so confusing at times because when I'm in the Dominican Republic, there's no me. I don't think in like, oh, did I say this and this would go away? I just speak. So I'm thinking it's just sort of the ship just goes that way. You know what I mean?
Sure.
There's the difference between being bilingual and being bicultural, right? And then being both. I think when you are both, you can transition and think and speak in that particular language. It's just sometimes it just cuts off. Like in French, when I was taking French classes, my God, it was just like, you would chip in a little English, a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of, it was just a disaster. But yeah, I mean, I believe that if you're both, you're bicultural, you're bilingual, and you have the combination, I quite honestly believe you don't have to think in any particular language. You just go.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think we might have lost John. No,
I'm still here, but
okay.
we had some minor technical difficulties of the power kind there.
Oh, of course.
Yep.
So your video is frozen, but that's all right. Well, Facebook may have gone down. Our Facebook feed. Actually, it looks like Facebook went down because I can't even get to Facebook. But anyway, back to our audience questions. So Mark Lambert had a question about the Firecracker, so I'll skip the Firecracker part. But private projects like this, are they something that you plan to do more often?
I do. As a matter of fact, we're working on a couple of things. Nothing set in stone yet. But I do love working with one or two of my retailers and try to understand a little bit better what they're after and seeing how we can help. And so there's so many little things that I might be interested in carrying. I know there's one project that I preached it because I know how it's on a Lonsdale. It was one of the ones that I that I send them a bundle. You guys try to use it, and all of a sudden it's great. We down to what you could have. That's personalized management. We cannot use that the right approach.
Is that like a 6x44 or 46 kind of range?
It would be a 6.25 by 44.
I think that might be something that was in some of the that they gave away a couple years ago. I think I had that.
Dude, it's a whole different level of flavor, man. It is a whole different level. It really takes the Fratello Corona to a different dimension. So who knows? There still might be a retailer out there that I may be able to talk to them about this. So we'll see.
So unfortunately, it looks like our video kind of dropped out, but we still got audio going out, so at least that. So we're just gonna roll with it because that's just what happens. So Omar, one of the things I want to talk about is you have this sort of event packaging. I think you're still continuing with it with the Boxer series, where you got the 5 cigar sampler and the cigar mold, which I think is really interesting. Like it's a really unique idea. Like you're not just giving away cigars at an event; you're giving away a sampler with a takeaway with a tangible, cool product with it. Is that continuing? And where did you come up with the idea for that? Because it's unique within events.
I think I'm not a pioneer in that sense by any means, but I do appreciate the fact that I like to give out. I like working on pretty unique stuff, man. The way that the NXT came out was before that I sat down. I blended cigar. I love a 5x44. That's my size. And I blended it for a very interesting reason. I besides the fact that I love that every time I would go into a shop, that would be the cigar that I would like to try. And it's a solid 45 minute smoke. So I knew exactly how much time I would spend because of the amount of time that I had to spend at NASA. After I would be done with NASA's work, I knew exactly the amount of time I needed to be able to maximize my Thursdays, my Fridays, and my Saturdays. So I did it as a way of keeping time, and I did it as a way of I love the size. And so one of my retailers brought up because I gave him one. I said, "What do you smoke?" It's the same 6.25 by 44, a little bit more the hero between you and me. But it's basically the 6.25 by 44, which is our Bianco number 1, which is a 5 by 44 format. Leased it. I want this. And I'm like, guys, Bianco is to the point that it doesn't need any more SKUs. I'm fine with that. And then say, why don't you do it as an event exclusive? And I did, and it was a success. I do the exact same thing with the Fratello Lancero, which is one that we gave as an exclusive to my good friend Jorge at Stogie's World Class, and I gave him the exclusivity of the blend, and he said, you mind if I asked him, you mind if I put it out for some events and stuff like that, and he was very egregious to it, and it was fine. So we did, and so my God, it was such a connection. I mean, we were able to just knock it out of the park. People love when I bring out the Lanceros. People love when I bring out the 5x44 mile and ask me for them specifically. So it was very successful.
Nice. Trippy, how are we doing for audience questions?
Well, I don't think we have any more comments since the feed's been getting weird. We do have one more question here. Harley Holmes wants to know, tell us one thing about blending cigars that consumers probably don't know. And as a follow-up, he wants to know if you ever got to push the big red button that launches the rocket.
I wish I pushed that. There was never really a button. It was mostly like liftoff. It was the mission control that sort of gave the signal that it was a go, and every single engineer, every single person that was in that room just needed to be in agreement that if one person didn't agree that it was ready for launch, it wouldn't go. But that would have been pretty cool if I had a button just pow. About blending, guys, what a lot of people don't really know is how hard it is. I don't think people have an appreciation of how hard. My God, how hard it is to get a cigar to just be balanced, to be flavorful, to have a good aroma, to have a nice finish. It is the hardest, guys. To me, I can only speak for myself, but to me, it is one of the hardest things complex to do. It is the combination. That I put too much ligero? I always like to say that this industry is not rocket science, because it's not. It's basil, seco, and ligero, guys. We need to keep it simple, but making that combination is not as simple. And so I make fun of it, but then I go back and see how hard it really is to just put a whole bunch of leaves together. You can just grab, here's a Biso, here's a Seco, here's a Ligero, and all of a sudden you think you got a great cigar. People do it in the factories all the time, and I love it, because they bring back their cigars and they smoke them, and they say, well, it's smoking a little bit different from what it was smoking at the factory. Well, yeah, that's where it really begins. It's a fun project to do when you're down there and you're blending and you're working it. But then when you bring it back home, it's like, it's really missing this. Is it really, beating the test of time? Is it getting to that point where it really needs to be? What does aging look like on this product? I mean, is it something that could appeal to general population, or just a few, or is it just something you love a lot, but really a whole lot of people wouldn't look like it that manner? And so you start working on different things. And so to find what I believe is that ultimate blend, that ultimate challenge of achieving the flavor profile that you really, really enjoy. So the guys at Joya de Nicaragua do an amazing job on their blending seminars that they do at the factory. I'm not sure if you guys have had a chance to go. Okay, good.
Many times. It's a second home for me now, yeah.
It's great. And so it really does allow for a solid beginning of what a lot of conversations that transpire after. It's very easy when they put 1, 2, and 3. You choose from this, you choose from that, and you choose from this. What's your wrapper? Well, we're going to use this wrapper, and then you start breaking it down to the point that you're smoking it, and then it's just, to me, it's a test of your flavor and your palate, and that can take a long time.
All right, well, we'll take a quick. I think our video's back, Trippy. Hopefully the Facebook feed is kicked back in, but if not, oh well. I do want to remind our audience you are tuned into Cigar Chat, broadcast live around the world, picked up on the Armed Forces Radio Network, and of course heard live on CigarFederation.com, YouTube.com, and when it's working, Facebook Live. I'm your host, John the Cigar Surgeon, joined as always by Trippy Trent. We're joined by our special guest, Omar from Fratello Cigars. Please stay tuned for a word from one of our sponsors. Show brought to you by Drew Estate. Until June 30th, if you're a Drew Diplomat member, you attend a rewards program event and make a promotional purchase, you will receive a Liga Privada Velvet Rat. You'll also be entered to win a Drew Diplomat pewter ashtray, mega standing ashtray, or the Swag Closet Humidor, dubbed the Divorcinator. All these products were built and designed by Drew Estate Subculture Studios. If you're not a member, download the Drew Diplomat app from the Apple Store or Google Play Store today. And we're back talking with Omar about cigars, talking about NASA, talking about blending. Before we took our break there, we were talking about Joya de Nicaragua. Yeah, I think I've been down to Joya like 7 or 8 times now. And I remember on the last time, Juan was sitting down with me and he's like, how many times have you been here? And I'm like, well, I've been there, and I went like 3 times in 6 months just this year alone. And he's like, do you find it gets boring? And I'm like, that's the thing. I could probably come down to your factory every month, and I don't think I would ever call that experience boring. Like, it's not in any way a boring experience to me. Yeah.
The guys, what I love the most, and again, when you ask me the question about, is there something that you miss about NASA, and it really comes down on everything you do is the people. It really is the people at Joya de Nicaragua that make it so great. It's Mario, it's the ladies that are putting the bands on, is Panchita, that's the one of the supervisors there, making sure that the bands are being done the right way. It's Cynthia, is everybody that plays such a good role, and it's the same thing as NASA. It's just the same thing as it is with Cigar Federation, just like with a retailer or a brand. Everything has to work. Every small thing has to work so that you guys can get an amazing cigar. The pigtail on the cigar had to be spot on. That's a couple of people in the rolling tables. It's the unfinished foot. Not to leave a little bit too much. It's the way the band is put so that it's not crooked. It's the way that, they made sure that the little Firecracker, extension was put right behind. I mean, it's every little thing is putting the boxes together. Is the guys in the factory making sure that there's not, too much ink that is going. I mean, every little part of the process has to work, guys, to make sure that the end consumer sees a product of high quality, which is what we provide, and a product made with the hands of very hardworking people in Nicaragua and Dominican Republic.
Yeah, we've discussed that a lot. How I think most consumers probably don't realize quite how many steps there are to getting a cigar from a seed to a cigar that you can buy at a shop. And there's so many little steps. And if anybody along the line messes up or can't do their job right or something, the end product doesn't exist. It's just not there.
Absolutely. And the consumers will see sloppiness like that. You cannot try to put one over a consumer that's been smoking cigars for 20 years. I was just at an event for Father's Day, and I asked one of the people that were in attendance where we were having a Q&A, and it was a great time at one of the breweries here in Virginia. And one of the guys, I asked him the question, for how many years have you been smoking? He's like, I've been smoking for 50 years.
Wow.
50 years. This guy's 70 years old. He was 20 years old. The guy looks in great shape, and he's like, I came here because I'm a fan of your cigars. I've been smoking for a long time, and I found a new home with Fratello. And so I was so impressed. It gave me goosebumps because when again, like I said, when you have been drinking beer for 50 years or drinking wine for 50 years or listening to the radio for 50 years, for goodness sakes, for anything that you've been doing for 50 years, you cannot just try and see if you can pull one over somebody. And so that person will see quality and they will see it like that. That person will see sloppiness and they will see it like that. And if something doesn't work in the entire process, or the crops from 1 year just didn't translate, and all of a sudden you try to blend it into that cigar and it's just not working, it's going to be even worse. So, I'm fortunate to be working with amazing guys at Hoya and amazing guys at La Aurora that are doing their jobs and keeping the quality of the process up to par.
So, Omar, you've got the Nevada announced. Can we expect, or should we expect, anything up your sleeve beyond the Nevada for the IPCPR? Are you holding anything back? Are you, is there anything else? Can you reveal that?
There's always surprises. I got, we're Fratello Naveta is obviously the big focus of the show. But we might have a few surprises here and there at the show, with specifically with our retailers and specifically with some of the sizes of Naveta. We're working on a couple of little things here and there to make sure that the branding is the right way and that people can see and relate the branding with the cigar. That they see the message that we're trying to send. It's something that we blended while I was at NASA. I mean, I was working on this project for the longest time. It kind of finally came into fruition. I never did make that move while at NASA because of even the perception of potential conflict of interest. I mean, I just didn't. There was nothing that I would do just to compromise the integrity of this amazing government agency. But once now that I'm out of the government, it was something that I felt very passionate about. It was Fratello. I will tell you, the Naveta project. It was a very emotional project for me as well, guys, because it's after every single successful mission. I was part of over 21 missions in my time at NASA. It was always a cigar that I would light up. And I would light it up with my friends. I would light it up with the guys, in Cape Canaveral after, we would go out for drinks and a cigar and just to really, welcome our guys back. And I was always fascinated about that feeling of what it would feel like if I would be in the orbiter, coming back, landing, touching down, and understanding the feeling of success, the mission, the drive, the accomplishment, the sense of duty that you have done something that very few people have done in their lifetimes, and millions wish they could.
Mm-hmm.
So for me was, and this is a project, like I said, I've been on my mind, and it's been on something that I've been working on, trying to just, what was that feeling like? And so as I was smoking Naveta and working on that blend, I just wanted to make sure that I could really capture it in. It was the ultimate celebratory cigar. So I think we got it, and I hope when you guys come see us at the show, you guys will enjoy it as much as I did blending it and working on it.
And I don't think we mentioned that if I've got my notes here right, navetta in Italian means shuttle, correct? That's the tie-in to NASA. So I don't think we actually mentioned that. So
right.
Just in case people are like, why? What's the connection? There's the connection.
That's right. That's right. You got to keep it with the branding. I cannot just come Fratello shuttle. You know what I mean? So it came out the fact that Naveta it's a great name, and Fratello Naveta, the branding is spot on. So I'm excited for it, guys. I'm super excited about this.
I know we're excited for it.
Yeah, definitely looking forward.
As we come to the end of our Armed Forces Radio Network segment, I have a question for you, Omar, and it's related to the industry, and it's more of a personal preference question. So the IPCPR had sent out a survey asking people where they would like to see the IPCPR. Now, you've obviously attended multiple IPCPRs, so you've seen it in a number of different cities. And I think the options they gave were Las Vegas, New Orleans, and Orlando. But my question expands outside of that. And my question would be, if you could host it anywhere within the continental United States, where would you like to see the IPCPR? Where do you think would be best for manufacturers like you?
I would love to see it in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., guys. Okay. This is
that'd be a good place for it.
It's home. It's home for me. I would love to see it in D.C. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I think there are way too many barriers to it. I think, but man, would it be amazing to do it in our nation's capital, you know? Indianapolis, I've been in Indianapolis a couple of times. I think they can actually, I think it's the venue, I've been at the venue itself. I think it's outstanding. I think they got the facilities, they got the hotels. But the IPCPR has done an amazing job on a couple of things, guys. They've done an amazing job in, I feel, keeping us up to date with what's been happening with the FDA. I think they've done an amazing job in putting an amazing show together so that we as manufacturers can introduce our cigars to a larger crowd. It's the only one of its kind. I can't stress enough the importance of having people be part of it, and I mean from not only the retailers, but and obviously the manufacturers, but you guys, the press, the people, all of our stakeholders in this industry, which is not that large, just need to come and need to be part of this. I think I call it a celebration. I would love to see other cities obviously being part of it. Financially, I understand it makes sense to have it in Vegas for us, because once you set up a particular warehouse in the city, it's much cheaper than having to ship in different places. Yep. So I wish we could see just, for 3 years, let's do it at this particular, venue. For another 3 years, let's do it at this particular venue. I just don't think that there are that many places where will host us. We are smokers. We are, we bring a lot of people. And so, and we require places to smoke. And